It's too big. I can't stand it, the young Apache woman pleads with the lonely farmer. The winter had been cruel that year. Breath. Snow stayed on the ground longer than anyone remembered, and the cold cut through skin like a sharp blade. For a young Apache woman named Naya, survival had become a daily test of strength and will. But she had grown up moving with her people, learning the land, the seasons, and the signs of nature. But war, sickness, and fear had broken the path she once knew. Break. One night, during a rushed escape from danger, she was separated from her family. By morning, she was alone. Naya walked for days with little food. Her moccasins were worn and her hands were cracked from cold and dry wind. She followed rivers when she could and avoided open land where she might be seen. She did not trust strangers. Her people had learned, through painful lessons, that trust could be costly. Still, hunger and weakness pushed her forward. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she refused to lie down and give up. As the land slowly changed, tall trees gave way to open fields. Fences appeared, cutting lines across the earth like scars. Naya had never liked fences. To her, land was meant to breathe freely. She watched from a distance, hiding among trees, as smoke rose from a small house in the middle of wide farmland. It was the first sign of human life she had seen in days. The house belonged to a farmer named Thomas Hale. He lived alone, far from the nearest town. His days followed a simple pattern: wake before sunrise, tend to animals, work the fields, and return home as the sky darkened. His wife had died years earlier from illness, and their child had not survived long after. Since then, silence had become his closest companion. He spoke more to the land than to people, believing it listened better. That morning, Thomas noticed something unusual. Near the edge of his property, close to the tree line, one of his chickens had gone missing. He followed the tracks carefully, rifle resting on his shoulder, not looking for trouble, but prepared for it. When he reached the trees, he saw her. Naya froze when she realized she had been spotted. Her body tensed, ready to run, but her strength failed her. She stood still, eyes alert, heart pounding. Thomas stopped too. He had seen native people before, but never this close, and never alone like this. She looked thin, tired, and scared. This was not an enemy standing before him. This was someone trying to survive. Neither spoke. The wind moved through the branches above them, and for a long moment the world felt balanced on silence. Thomas slowly lowered his rifle and rested it against a tree. He raised his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. Naya watched every move, searching his face for danger. She did not understand his words when he spoke, but his tone was calm. She held out the chicken, offering it back. Thomas shook his head and pushed it gently toward her. He pointed to the house, then to her, then mimed eating, but hunger won over fear. Slowly, she nodded. The walk to the house felt long for both of them. Thomas moved carefully, keeping distance, while Naya stayed alert, memorizing every detail in case she needed to escape. Inside the house, warmth wrapped around her like a forgotten memory. The smell of food made her stomach ache with need. Palm. Thomas gave her bread and stew. He stepped back, giving her space. She ate slowly at first, unsure if it was real, then faster as her body remembered hunger. He watched quietly, his heart heavy. He had seen suffering before, but something about her loneliness felt too familiar. After she ate, exhaustion took over. She leaned against the wall, eyes closing despite herself. Thomas placed a blanket nearby and stepped outside, letting her rest without feeling watched. The sky above his fields was wide and endless, just like his life. For years he had told himself he was content alone, but seeing another human being struggle so deeply stirred something he had buried. When Naya woke, the sun was lower. Panic rushed through her until she remembered where she was. She stood quickly, ready to flee, but Thomas was outside, chopping wood. He noticed her and stepped back, giving her room. He pointed to the well, offering water. Small acts, careful and patient. Communication was slow. Breaths. They used gestures, simple words, and time. Naya learned his. She did not tell him her whole story, and he did not ask. Pain did not need words. As evening approached, Naya grew uneasy. Pace. Staying in one place felt dangerous. Her life had taught her to move, to never settle where trouble could find her. The wide land around the house made her nervous. It felt open, exposed, and too quiet. Psst. She stood at the edge of the field, looking out at the endless space. Thomas noticed her fear. He thought the land was peaceful, but to her, it was overwhelming.
He tried to explain, pointing to the fields, the barn, the animals.
He spoke about staying, about working together, about safety. His words were meant kindly, but Naya felt pressure rising in her chest. She shook her head, eyes wide. In broken English mixed with her own language, she tried to explain. Her voice trembled as she gestured to the land, the house, the fences. It was too much. Too big. Too different. Her life had been stolen piece by piece, and now this new world asked her to step fully into it all at once. She pressed her hand to her chest and pleaded, "It's too big, I can't stand it." Thomas finally understood. Paration. He had been thinking only of what he could offer, not how it might feel to receive it. To him, the land was security. To her, it was another unknown, another weight. He nodded slowly and stepped back, giving her space again. That night, Naya stayed near the edge of the property, close enough to feel safe, but far enough to feel free. Thomas did not force her to choose. He left food by the fence and returned to his house. As darkness settled, both of them lay awake, thinking. Naya wondered if this lonely place might become something more than fear. Thomas wondered if helping someone meant learning when to step aside. The land remained wide and silent, holding two broken lives that had crossed paths by chance. Neither knew what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, neither felt completely invisible. This was only the beginning. Morning came slowly over the wide land. A pale light spread across the fields, touching the frost on the ground and turning it silver. Naya woke before the sun fully rose. She had slept lightly, her body still trained to listen for danger. Every sound made her alert, the wind moving dry grass, a distant bird, the soft steps of an animal. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the fence line and the farmer's house in the distance, and the memory returned. She sat up and wrapped her thin shawl around her shoulders. Her body felt stronger after food and rest, but her heart was still uneasy. Staying in one place felt strange. In her old life, mornings began with familiar voices and shared tasks. Here, the land felt empty and too quiet. Rest. Still, she could not deny that she felt safer than she had in many days. Thomas woke with the same restless feeling. He had slept little, thinking about the young woman near his land. He worried she might leave before sunrise, or worse, that she might be found by people who would not treat her kindly. He moved slowly as he prepared his morning chores, careful not to startle her. When he looked toward the fence, he saw her sitting there, watching the land with serious eyes. He raised a hand in greeting and stayed where he was. After a moment, she nodded. That small sign of trust mattered more to him than words. He finished feeding the animals and then carried a small basket toward the fence. Inside were bread, dried meat, and an apple. He placed it on a flat rock and stepped back. Naya watched carefully. When he moved away, she approached and picked up the basket. She hesitated, then looked up at him and said his name slowly, testing the sound. Thomas. He smiled, surprised and pleased.
Naya, he replied, making sure he said it correctly. Her lips pressed together in a faint smile, gone almost as soon as it appeared.
As the day went on, an unspoken pattern began to form. Naya stayed near the edge of the land, helping in small ways when she felt comfortable. She showed Thomas how to read the sky for changes in weather and how to move quietly through tall grass, without leaving clear tracks. Thomas showed her how to draw water from the well and how to store food so it lasted longer through winter. Still, the land remained a heavy presence. The fields stretched far in every direction, open and exposed. To Thomas, they meant work and survival. To Naya, they felt like something that could swallow her whole. Every fence reminded her of boundaries she did not choose. Every building felt fixed, unable to move when danger came. That afternoon, Thomas tried to explain his life more clearly. Using simple words and gestures, he talked about planting crops, staying through the seasons, and building something steady. He spoke about how the land could provide if treated with patience. His voice was calm, hopeful. He meant to reassure her. But as he spoke, Naya's chest tightened. She saw not comfort, but years of being tied to one place. Her people moved with the land, never owning it, never being owned by it. The idea of staying, of living behind fences, felt like another kind of loss. But she shook her head and stepped back, her eyes filled with emotion she did not fully understand. Thomas stopped speaking at once. He realized he had pushed too much, too fast. He had been lonely for so long that he forgot how overwhelming change could be for someone already carrying deep pain. That evening, a rider passed near the road that led to the farm. Naya noticed first. Her body reacted before her mind did. She dropped low and moved toward the trees, her breath quick and shallow. Thomas followed her gaze and saw the rider. Just a man traveling through, but he understood her fear. The rider slowed, looking toward the house. Thomas stepped forward, placing himself between the rider's view and Naya's hiding place. He waved politely and said nothing more than a short greeting. The rider nodded and continued on his way. When the sound faded, Naya slowly came out from the trees. Her hands were shaking. But Thomas spoke gently, telling her the man was gone.
He could not remove the fear from her past, but he could show her that, here, someone was willing to stand in front of it.
As night fell, the wind grew colder. Thomas pointed to the barn, offering a warmer place to rest. Naya hesitated, then followed him inside. The smell of hay and animals reminded her of camps she had known long ago. It felt safer than the open field. They sat near a small lantern, its light soft and steady. For the first time, Naya spoke more than a few words. She talked about her people, about moving with the seasons, about songs sung at night to keep spirits strong. Thomas listened without interrupting. He did not fully understand every word, but he understood the meaning behind them. He spoke, too, about his wife and child, about how the house had once been full of laughter. His voice broke slightly when he mentioned them, but he did not turn away. Naya listened closely. Loss. She understood. It was a language she knew well. Dispute in that shared quiet. Something changed. They were still strangers, but not enemies, but no longer alone. Yet the question of staying remained heavy between them. Later, as Naya lay on the hay, she stared up at the dark wooden beams. The space felt closed, but safe. She thought of the wide land again. It was not just big, it was full of expectations. Breaking it, staying on it, becoming part of it felt like a life chosen for her, not by her. Thomas lay awake in the house, staring at the ceiling. He realized that kindness was not only about giving shelter or food, it was also about giving choice. He could offer help without asking her to become something she was not ready to be. The next morning, he did something different. Instead of inviting her deeper into his world, he met her at the edge of the land. He pointed toward the distant hills and then back toward the farm, making it clear she was free to come and go. No demands, no pressure. Bert. Naya studied his face. She saw honesty there, and patience.
Slowly, she nodded. The tight feeling in her chest eased just a little.
The land was still big. Her fear was still real. But now, the choice felt lighter. As days passed, they continued this careful balance. Some days, she stayed longer. Some days, she disappeared into the trees and returned by night. Thomas accepted it. He learned that trust grew best when it was not forced. The land did not change. It remained wide, quiet, and demanding. But within that space, two wounded lives were learning something new. Not how to erase fear, but how to live beside it. And though the future was uncertain, it no longer felt completely unbearable. This was the next step, not an ending, but a slow unfolding of understanding that would test them both in ways they could not yet see. The days slowly began to change their rhythm. Spring pushed away the last signs of winter, and the land softened under warmer light. Grass grew taller, and small flowers appeared near the fence line. For Naya, this season always meant movement and renewal. For Thomas, it meant long hours of work and careful planning. Their worlds were still different, but now they touched each other more often. Naya started spending more time near the farm. She did not enter the house unless invited, and Thomas never asked her to stay inside. They met in open spaces, where she felt more comfortable. Sometimes she helped him without being asked. She showed him which plants near the stream could be used for healing and which should be avoided. She taught him how to notice animal paths that were not easy to see, and how to stay aware of the land without fighting it. Thomas listened closely. He had lived on this land for years, but he realized he had only learned one way to survive on it. Naya's knowledge came from respect, not control.
He stopped clearing certain areas after she explained how animals depended on them.
Slowly, the land seemed less like something to conquer and more like something to share. In return, Thomas taught Naya practical skills that helped her feel less helpless in this new world. He showed her how to fix torn cloth, how to store food for long periods, and how to protect herself from storms without needing to move camp. He never spoke as if he was teaching a child. He treated her as an equal, and she noticed that. Still, fear did not leave easily. Loud noises made Naya tense. Any stranger near the road sent her back into hiding. At night, she sometimes woke suddenly, breath quick, heart racing. Thomas noticed these moments but did not question her. Instead, he made sure she always knew where she could go to feel safe. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled in faster than expected. Dark clouds covered the sky and strong wind bent the trees. Naya was near the stream when the rain began. Thunder echoed across the fields, and for a moment panic took hold. She ran toward the trees, but the rain fell hard and fast. Thomas saw the storm coming and went looking for her. He found her soaked and shaking, crouched near a fallen log. He did not grab her or pull her toward the house. Instead, he stood nearby and pointed toward the barn, letting her decide. After a brief moment, she followed him. Inside the barn, the sound of rain hitting the roof was loud, but steady. Naya sat against the wall, pulling her knees close. Thomas lit the lantern and placed it at a distance so she would not feel trapped. The storm passed slowly, and with it, some of her fear faded. When the rain finally stopped, Naya spoke softly. She talked about storms from her childhood, about nights when her people gathered together for warmth and safety. Thomas listened, feeling the weight of her memories. He realized that safety was not just about walls and roofs. It was about knowing you were not alone. As weeks passed, they shared more stories. Naya spoke of her family, of elders who taught her songs and lessons about balance. She spoke of loss, but also of strength. Thomas spoke of his past, of dreams he once had, and how grief had made him shrink his world. Through these conversations, both began to heal in quiet ways. One day, Thomas asked Naya if she wanted to help with planting. Breath. He made sure to say it was her choice. She hesitated, then agreed. Together, they worked the soil. Naya noticed how careful Thomas was, how he no longer rushed or forced the land. She showed him a small ritual of respect, something her people did before asking the earth to give. Thomas followed her lead, unsure but willing. That moment changed something for Naya. For the first time, the land did not feel like an enemy or a trap. It felt like a place that could listen. Still big, still demanding, but not completely overwhelming. Not everyone saw it that way. Word began to spread among nearby settlers about the Apache woman near Thomas's farm. Some were curious. Others were suspicious. One afternoon, two men stopped by under the excuse of borrowing tools. Their eyes searched the land more than they looked at Thomas. Naya sensed the danger before Thomas did. She moved quietly toward the trees. One of the men noticed her movement and frowned. Thomas stepped forward, his voice firm but calm. He told them she was under his protection and that they were not welcome to cause trouble. The men left, but the tension remained. That night, Thomas and Naya spoke about what might come next. Thomas knew his land could not fully shield her from hatred. Naya knew staying meant risk, but leaving meant returning to uncertainty. For the first time, Thomas admitted his fear. He was afraid of losing her presence, but also afraid of putting her in danger. Naya listened carefully. She realized he was not trying to hold her there. He was struggling with care, not control. Days later, Naya made a decision. She did not announce it with big words. She simply began helping more openly, no longer hiding as quickly. She still kept her distance from strangers, but she no longer ran at every sound. The land still felt big, but now she felt stronger within it. Thomas noticed the change. He respected it, understanding that strength did not mean fear was gone. It meant fear no longer ruled every choice. One evening, as the sun set across the fields, Naya stood at the fence line again. She looked out at the wide land that once made her heart race. It was still vast, still quiet. But now it held memories of shared work, shared silence, and shared respect. She turned to Thomas and spoke clearly. She said she would stay for now, not forever, not as a promise, but as her own choice. Thomas nodded, accepting the words exactly as they were.
The land did not suddenly feel small, but it no longer felt impossible.
Does. Two people, shaped by loss and survival, were learning how to stand within something larger than themselves without being crushed by it. This part of their journey was not about comfort.
It was about growth. And growth, they both knew, never came without challenge.
Summer arrived with heavy heat and long days. The sun rose early and stayed high, pressing down on the land until the ground felt warm beneath every step. The fields grew thick with crops and the work became harder. Thomas woke before dawn each day, and now Naya often woke at the same time. Not because she was asked to, but because she chose to. She worked beside him in the mornings, helping where she felt comfortable. They spoke little during these hours. The sound of tools, birds, and wind filled the space between them. There was comfort in this quiet effort. For Thomas, it was the first time since his loss that work did not feel empty. For Naya, it was a way to stay connected without feeling trapped. But change never came alone. With summer came more travelers on the road and more eyes watching the farm. Some people slowed their horses when passing by. Others stopped at a distance, pretending to rest while looking too closely. Naya felt it every time. Her body tightened, her senses sharpened. The land that had begun to feel steady now carried new tension. One afternoon, Thomas returned from the nearby town with worry written across his face. He did not speak at first, but Naya noticed his silence. Later, when they sat near the barn as the sun lowered, he told her what he had heard. Some people were talking. They did not like that an Apache woman was staying on his land. They spoke with fear, and fear often turned into something worse. Naya listened calmly, though her heart beat faster. This was not new to her. Suspicion followed her people wherever they went. What hurt more was knowing her presence could bring trouble to the one place that had given her space to heal. That night, she did not sleep much. Best, she walked the edge of the land, touching the fence, looking out toward the dark hills. Leaving would be easier, Fritz. She could disappear into the distance before dawn, as she had done before. But something stopped her. This place was not just land anymore. It was where she had begun to feel seen as a person, not a problem. Thomas also lay awake, thinking. He knew the risk was growing. He asked himself if he had the right to let her stay when danger might follow. He asked himself if asking her to leave would be another kind of harm. There was no easy answer. The next day, trouble came closer. Two men rode up to the farm in the late afternoon. Their voices were loud, their questions sharp. Race. They asked Thomas why she was there and how long he planned to keep her. Naya stood at a distance listening, her hands clenched at her sides. Bait. Thomas answered firmly. He said she was there by choice and under his protection. Brace. His voice did not shake, but his heart did. He had never stood against others like this before. The men left angry, warning him that not everyone would be so polite. After they were gone, silence fell heavily. Naya stepped forward. She could see the strain on Thomas's face. Friends. She told him she would leave if he wanted her to. Her words were calm, but inside, she felt like she was breaking something fragile. Thomas shook his head slowly. He told her he would not force her out to make things easier for himself. He also told her the truth, that staying would not be simple anymore. For the first time, they spoke openly about fear, not just survival. Days passed under this shadow. Naya stayed closer to the trees again. Thomas kept watch more carefully. They did not stop working, but the ease between them was tested. Still, neither turned away. One evening, a small fire started near the edge of the fields, likely from dry grass and careless passing. Smoke rose quickly, and panic spread through the land. Thomas ran to contain it using water and tools. Naya did not hesitate. She moved fast, using knowledge from her past, guiding the fire away from the crops. Together, they stopped it before it could grow. When it was over, both were exhausted, covered in dirt and smoke. They stood there, breathing hard, looking at the land they had protected together. In that moment, something became clear to Naya. This place was no longer just where she stayed. It was something she had defended. That realization scared her more than the fire. Caring meant roots, and roots meant risk. That night, she spoke again of leaving, but in honesty.
She said she did not want to be the reason trouble came to his door.
Thomas listened carefully. Then he said something that surprised them both. He told her that trouble came whether one hid or stood still. What mattered was choosing how to face it. Die! What do you bede? He did not ask her to stay. He did not ask her to go. He told her the decision was hers, fully and truly. Naya spent the next day alone, walking far into the hills. She thought about her people, about movement and freedom. She thought about the land, about learning to stand instead of run. By sunset, she returned. She did not give a long speech. She simply said she would stay and face what came, but on her own terms. She would not hide, but she would not belong to anyone but herself. Thomas accepted this without question. From that day, they worked not as host and guest, but as two people sharing responsibility. The land still felt big. The danger was still real. But Naya no longer felt small within it. The test had not ended. It had only begun. But now they both stood ready. Not because they were fearless, but because they had chosen courage over silence. Autumn arrived quietly, as if the land itself was taking a deep breath after a long summer. The air became cooler, and the leaves began to change color, painting the fields and trees with shades of gold and brown. The crops were ready for harvest, and the days grew shorter. For Thomas and Naya, this season felt different from the others. It carried the weight of everything they had faced together. They worked side by side, gathering what the land had given. The work was steady and calm. There was no rush, only purpose. Naya moved with confidence now. Her hands knew the tools, and her eyes understood the fields. There. She no longer felt like a visitor walking on borrowed ground. Still, she reminded herself every day that this place did not own her, and she did not belong to it. She was there by choice. People continued to pass by the road, but fewer stopped. The rest, those who did, kept their distance. Word had spread that Thomas was not easily pushed, and that the woman on his land was not weak. Fear still existed, but it had softened into caution. Sometimes that was enough to keep trouble away. One afternoon, an older man from a nearby farm came alone. He approached slowly, hands visible, voice polite. He spoke to Thomas about the harvest, and then, carefully, greeted Naya. His words were simple and respectful. It was not friendship, but it was not hostility either. Naya nodded in return. Small moments like this mattered more than loud promises. As the harvest ended, the nights grew colder. Naya began sleeping in the barn more often, finding comfort in its familiar smells and steady shelter. Thomas made sure there was always enough firewood and food stored. He no longer did these things thinking he was providing for someone else. He did them because shared life required shared care. One evening, As they sat watching the sun sink low, Thomas spoke about the future. Not plans, not demands, just thoughts. He said the land would always be there, changing but steady. He said people came and went, and sometimes the hardest part was accepting that nothing stayed the same. Naya listened quietly. Then she spoke of her own future. She said she did not know where her path would lead, only that she felt stronger now than she had in a long time. She said learning to stay had taught her as much as learning to move. Thomas nodded. He understood that her strength did not come from settling down, but from choosing when to stand. Winter approached again, but this time it did not feel cruel. The cold came slowly, giving them time to prepare. Snow fell softly, covering the land in white silence. Inside the barn and house, warmth remained. They shared meals, stories, and long stretches of quiet. Neither felt the need to fill every moment with words. One night a harsh storm struck. Wind howled, and snow fell thick and heavy. The barn shook, and the house groaned under the weight of the weather. For a moment, fear returned. But this time, they faced it together. They checked the animals, secured the doors, and waited out the storm. When morning came, the land was still there. Changed, but standing. That morning, Naya stepped outside and looked across the fields. The land was wide, silent, and powerful. Once, it had felt like something she could not survive. Now, it felt like something she understood. Desperation. Not fully, not completely, but enough. As winter passed, Naya began to feel a quiet pull inside her. It was not fear, and it was not sadness. It was the same pull that had guided her people for generations. Movement, change, growth. She did not speak of it right away, but Thomas sensed it.
One evening, she finally told him. She said she would be leaving when the weather warmed.
Not because she was running, and not because she was pushed away, but because her path was calling her forward again. Thomas felt the familiar ache of loss rise in his chest, but he did not fight it. He had learned that holding on too tightly only led to emptiness. He told her he understood. He told her the land would remember her, and so would he. When spring returned, Naya prepared quietly. She packed little. Her strength was not in what she carried, but in what she had learned. On the morning she left, the sky was clear, and the air smelt new. Bathe, bathe, she stood at the edge of the land. One last time, she looked at the fields, the barn, the house, and the long road beyond. The land was still big. Life was still uncertain, but she no longer felt small inside it. Thomas walked with her to the boundary.
It did not make promises. It did not speak of forever.
They shared a moment of deep understanding that needed no words. Naya stepped forward, then paused. She turned back and thanked him, not for saving her, but for respecting her. Thomas nodded, his eyes steady. He thanked her, too, for reminding him that life did not end with loss, and that courage could grow in silence. She walked away, her figure growing smaller against the open land. Narration. Thomas watched until she disappeared from sight. The land returned to quiet, but it did not feel empty. He went back to his work, changed but grounded. The fields stretched wide as ever, demanding effort and patience. He faced them with a new heart, one that knew loneliness was not the same as solitude. Far away, Naya walked toward her future, carrying strength, choice, and balance within her. The land behind her had been big. Life ahead would be big too. But now she knew she could stand within it. And that was the true beginning.